We're going to get into a really necessary but very difficult topic today.
We are. The system of concentration camps that the Nazi regime built across Europe in the 1930s and 40s.
And our goal is to really understand the mechanics of it. Not just the horror, but the cold facts.
Exactly.
Mm.
How was this huge network actually created? How did it operate day to day? And why is it so important to study how it was all put together?
So let's start right at the beginning. 1933, the Nazi Party takes power in Germany.
And these camps, they weren't an afterthought. They were established almost immediately.
Straight away. So what was the primary goal at first?
It was about political control. The very first goal was to silence anyone who disagreed with the new government, to make it clear that dissent was not an option.
And who are those first victims?
Political opponents. So you're talking about leaders of labor unions, members of other political parties, communists, anyone really who was speaking out against Hitler.
And this is where it gets really chilling from a legal standpoint. They couldn't just use the regular courts.
No, because these people hadn't necessarily committed a crime.
Yeah.
So they bypassed the entire judicial system.
How did they manage that?
They used special laws, administrative decrees that let them issue something called protective custody.
Protective custody. What did that mean in practice?
It meant the authorities could arrest and imprison people indefinitely. No charges, no trial, and no way for a lawyer or a judge to step in.
So your basic rights just disappeared.
They were gone. The government just declared they didn't apply to you anymore.
And these first camps in 33, they weren't the huge compounds we often imagine, were they?
Not at all. They were often makeshift, set up in abandoned factories, old warehouses, empty prisons, and they were usually located near major cities.
And who were the guards?
At first, it was mainly state police and some of the paramilitary units loyal to the party, like the early SS.
So it started small, but that framework.
That framework, bypassing the law, using special guards, that was the foundation for everything that came next.
Okay, so as the decade moves on, past 1933, the scope of who they're targeting starts to widen. A lot.
It explodes. It stops being just about political rivals and becomes about total social control.
So who else was swept up in this?
Anyone who didn't fit their narrow definition of a proper German citizen. So people they called socially inferior, like those with disabilities, homosexuals, and then increasingly people targeted purely for their race or religion.
Most notably, Jewish people.
Yes. The number of camps and prisoners just grew exponentially to handle this much wider group of people.
And as the numbers grew, the locations of the camps changed, too.
They did. They were moved out of the cities and relocated to more remote, isolated areas.
Which was a deliberate choice, wasn't it?
Absolutely. It was about hiding the growing scale of what was happening from the general public.
And the infrastructure changed.
Completely. They went from being temporary warehouses to permanent high-security compounds.
Yeah.
Barracks, guard towers, high fences.
Often with electrified wire.
Yes. And the prisoners themselves were often the ones forced to build the very walls and towers that would imprison them.
So by the end of the 1930s, this is no longer some improvised project.
No, it's institutionalized. The camp system became an official, permanent part of the national government, run entirely by the SS. It was a tool of terror to enforce total obedience.
Let's zero in on the moment a person arrived at one of these camps. The entire process was designed to strip away their humanity.
From the very first second, people arrived crammed into freight cars, sometimes for days, with no food, no water, no sanitation.
And when those doors finally opened,
It was chaos, shouting, violence. They were forced into lines, and every single personal belonging was confiscated.
photos, letters, wedding rings.
All of it, gone. Then they were given a thin striped uniform, and their hair was shaved off.
Why was shaving the hair such a systematic step?
It was partly physical, to control lice, but the psychological impact was devastating. Hair is so central to our identity. Shaving it made everyone look the same, destroying their individuality.
Making them feel less human.
Exactly. And then came the number.
It's the identification number.
Yes. And in some of the major camps, that number was literally tattooed onto the prisoner's skin. A permanent mark.
From that point on, you weren't a name.
You were a number. That's what the guards called you. The whole process was engineered to break your spirit and make you easier to control.
Okay, so let's move inside the walls. The daily routine, it was just brutal.
It was governed by this incredibly rigid, harsh schedule, starting hours before dawn.
And maybe the worst part of every single day was the roll call?
The roll call, yes. Prisoners had to stand outside for hours, perfectly still. It didn't matter if it was freezing, snowing, pouring rain.
This wasn't just about counting people, was it?
No, it was a form of torture, a test of endurance.
Yeah.
If you moved, if you shifted your weight, if you collapsed from the cold,
You'd be severely punished.
immediately and publicly, in front of everyone, as a lesson.
And the living conditions themselves were designed to be lethal. Tell me about the barracks.
They were just these wooden buildings, frighteningly overcrowded. No proper heating, no ventilation.
And the beds.
Just simple wooden bunks stacked in tiers. And you were lucky to even get a small space on one. Multiple people were often forced to share a single wooden shelf.
And on top of all that, there was the constant hunger.
Chronic hunger. The food rations were deliberately insufficient. Never enough to sustain a working adult.
What were they actually given?
Usually just some watery soup, maybe made from root vegetables, and a small piece of bread. It kept everyone in a constant state of weakness.
Which made it impossible to resist.
Exactly. And then there was the forced labor, the other pillar of their existence.
Long hours in incredibly dangerous conditions.
The labor was exhausting. Prisoners were sent to work in places like stone quarries or munitions factories. They had to carry these massive loads, like heavy rocks or bags of cement.
And there was an economic angle to this, right? Private companies were involved.
Oh, yes. Private German companies actually paid the SS a fee per prisoner, per day, to use them as a source of cheap, disposable labor.
It's just horrifying.
It was exploitation on a massive scale. The work lasted from sunrise to sunset, with almost no breaks and no safety equipment.
And if you worked too slowly,
You were beaten. The combination of the brutal labor and the starvation diet,
yeah,
it was a death sentence. Many people simply died from exhaustion. It was called extermination through labor.
And the health conditions were just as bad. Hygiene was basically non-existent.
Right. Water for washing was incredibly limited.
Yeah.
The toilets were often just open pits shared by thousands of people.
And with that kind of filth.
You get insects, lice, fleas, they spread rapidly.
And they carried disease.
Deadly diseases like typhus, which just tore through the weakened population.
And medical care.
There was none to speak of. If you got too sick to work, you were basically left to die, or worse. The high death rate was a direct result of this deliberate neglect.
Let's talk about the people enforcing this, the guards.
The camps were run by specialized SS units. They were trained to see the prisoners as subhuman, as enemies.
They had total authority.
Total. And they were encouraged to use extreme cruelty beatings, psychological pressure, attack dogs, to maintain absolute order through terror.
And they also used a kind of internal system to maintain control.
Yes, a very clever, brutal system. They would give certain prisoners minor positions of authority, like being in charge of a barrack.
In exchange for what?
For small favors, a little extra food, a slightly better chance of survival.
Which must have created so much distrust among the prisoners themselves.
It did. It made it almost impossible for them to organize any kind of unified resistance. The system turned victims against each other.
Now, it's really important to understand that not all camps were the same. The network had different types of camps for different purposes.
That's a crucial distinction.
Yeah.
First, you had transit camps.
Okay, what were those?
They were basically temporary holding facilities,
Yeah.
waiting rooms, places where people were gathered before being shipped further east.
And then you had the labor camps.
Right, camps like Buchenwald. These were focused on industrial production for the war. Their main function was exploitation through work.
And finally, the third type.
The extermination camps. Places like Auschwitz-Birkenau and Treblinka.
These were different.
They were specifically designed and engineered for one purpose. Mass murder on an industrial scale.
And they were mostly located in occupied Poland, away from Germany.
To hide the crimes. They had specialized facilities, like gas chambers, to kill huge numbers of people as efficiently as possible. This was the ultimate goal of the system.
And the sheer geographic scale of this was enormous.
The network stretched across almost all of occupied Europe. It required a huge coordinated railway system to move millions of people across the continent.
But even in the face of all this horror and dehumanization, people did resist.
They did. Resistance happened every single day, often in small, quiet ways.
Like what?
Sharing a tiny piece of your bread with someone weaker. Holding secret religious services. Trying to smuggle information to the outside world.
These were ways of holding on to your humanity.
Exactly. It was a rebellion against the system's attempt to crush their spirit. While there were a few armed uprisings, which were incredibly dangerous, day-to-day survival often depended on forming these small supportive groups.
And then, near the end of the war, the Allied armies began to reach these camps.
Yes, and as they liberated them, the soldiers were completely unprepared for what they found. the horrific conditions, the thousands of starving survivors.
And they documented it.
Immediately, military photographers and filmmakers recorded what they saw, providing the world with the first clear, undeniable evidence of the atrocities.
They rushed to provide aid, but for many it was too late.
Many survivors were just too weak to recover. And even for those who did, their lives were shattered. They'd lost their entire families, their homes.
So today, many of these campsites are preserved.
As museums and memorials, they stand as a physical reminder of what happens when hatred and extreme intolerance take over a society.
And the work of collecting survivor testimonies and documentation continues.
It's vital to make sure these facts are never forgotten and never denied.
The whole system of concentration camps really showed the terrifying power a government can have when it uses fear and control to strip people of their dignity.
And understanding exactly how that system was built is so essential for us to protect human rights for everyone today and in the future. It forces us to ask what small steps toward control we might need to challenge in our own time. That's the real lesson.
Good luck with your studies.